Is word that a former Trump campaign official was communicating with a former Russian spy before the presidential election and knew the person had ties to Russian intelligence. That's according to court documents from the special counsel's investigation. New documents, just got them today. The official is Rick Gates. He is President Trump's former deputy campaign chairman. Last month, Rick Gates agreed to cooperate with the special counsel Robert Mueller. Gates pleaded guilty to financial fraud and lying to investigators. Peter Ducey again with the rest of the story. Peter?
And Shep, we don't know a ton about this Russian spy, just that the special counsel's office has connected this person to the GRU, which is the Kremlin's main intelligence apparatus. Beyond that, this Russian spy is only referred to in these documents as Person A, and the government is alleging that a Dutch lawyer who's about to be sentenced for lying to the special counsel, Alex van der Zwaan, heard about the spy known as Person A from Rick Gates. We know this because there's a 7-page long sentencing memorandum that was just filed in federal court where this line is contained. It says, Federal Bureau of Investigation special agents assisting the special counsel's office assess that Person A has ties to a Russian intelligence service and had such ties in 2016. During his first interview with the special counsel's office, van der Zwaan admitted that he knew of that connection, stating that Gates told him Person A was a former Russian intelligence officer with the GRU. Van der Zwaan, who connected these dots between a spy and Rick Gates, pled guilty to lying to the special counsel's office, and now he's waiting for his punishment. Shep.
Peter Ducey in Washington. Thank you, Peter. Turn to Jeff Mason now, White House correspondent for Reuters. He was convicted of lying.
Yeah, and the sort of interesting part of these reports today is that it goes to the question of collusion. President Trump has said over and over again that this investigation is a witch hunt, that there was no collusion. But if the special prosecutor is drawing ties between somebody who was his deputy campaign manager at the time and had connections with someone in the Russian intelligence agency, then that's something that at least we know that the special prosecutor is looking at that and is looking at those ties. We can't draw conclusions far beyond that, but it goes to the principle, or it goes to the theme of collusion, which is what this investigation is all about.
On the matter of the discussion of pardons, which clearly the White House is denying, the report stands that it's a 5-reporter byline, including Maggie Haberman and others from the New York Times, and they have come back and said that we stand by our reporting, that there was discussion at least of the pardon. In the main, help our viewers understand why discussion of a pardon regarding those 2 particular men would be something that would be questioned.
Sure. Well, so if there was, in fact, a discussion of a pardon, and you're right to say that the White House is denying that, but if that did happen, then it suggests potential obstruction of justice, because it would suggest, A, that people in the White House or people in Trump's orbit were concerned about what those 2 men might say to the special counsel, and by floating with the attorney the possibility of a pardon, potentially trying to influence either their testimony or their decisions about what they would say, because this was hanging as an option if, in fact, they were convicted. So that's the concern. Now, whether or not that's something that the special counsel ends up going into looking at as well is not a question that we can answer, but that's why it's relevant, and that's why that reporting is very important today.
You know, the president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, and we hear the president behind the scenes, is kind of riled up over this. Their point is this: we haven't discussed pardoning anybody, and yet these reports keep coming out, and they say the only time they get questions about this is from people in the media. That it's just a talking point. It's just a narrative. It's not a real thing.
Well, it's worth pointing out that in July of last year, President Trump did tweet that he has the full power to pardon.
Which he does.
So, which he does, and Sarah Sanders acknowledged that today as well.
But the question is, was just putting that out intimidation, or could that be seen as intimidation one way or another?
Well, and I can't answer that question.
I can't either.
It's right. I mean, that's something that the attorneys will have to look into and make a decision about. But the fact that the president weighed in last summer about his ability and his power to pardon, that came in the context of the Russia investigation. So, you know, a person could draw conclusions about why he tweeted or why he brought it up then.
A lot of personnel changes in the building behind you over the last few weeks. Is there a noticeable difference in the way the place runs? And if it is, could you lift the veil and tell our viewers about it?
Well, that's a good question. No, there's not a noticeable difference. I think we're always waiting to see what's going to happen next in terms of departures and arrivals, in terms of staff. It's been actually kind of quiet the last few days in terms of actually seeing the president. He hasn't had any public events where we can throw questions at him. But yeah, it's never a dull in terms of staff movements, and there might be more coming in the next weeks or months beyond. We know that there's some consideration about the VA secretary. We'll see where it goes.
Some chatter about a new communications director. We know they're going to get one at some point, and there's a name out there. What are you hearing? Anything?
Well, Hope Hicks is leaving. We know that she had announced her departure several weeks ago. One of the names that I had heard is somebody who currently works for the president, Mercy Schlapp. Whether or not she ends up getting the job, I'm not sure, but that's one of the names that I've heard floated around.
Jeff Mason from Reuters, out in the yard. Great to see you. Thank you.